All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are on to day 2 of the Unit 5 section, which is all about graphs and being able to read graphs and interpret them. So for our warm-up here, I just want you to read this very short, quick paragraph related to pie charts. So take a moment, pause the video, and read this paragraph to yourself. Now, as you have hopefully already read this paragraph to yourself, I just want to point out some important stuff. That a lot of times when we dive into graphs, a reminder that the whole reason for a graph is to make things easier to understand, okay? We could throw a bunch of numbers at someone and say, hey, 50 people said this and 20 people said that. But by actually giving them this pie chart, you see a lot more clearly 10% this, 8% that, kind of really breaks down the numbers. Another important thing is that all graphs should have some form of a title, because without a title, you have no idea what the graph is even going to be talking about. And you could have multiple graphs that look very similar but cover different topics. Another important part of a graph is the idea that you have to have a key. If I did not have a key, this graph would mean nothing to me. It would be just a bunch of percentages, and I'd be like, I don't even know what these sections are. Is this talking about cupcakes and that brownies and that cakes? I have no idea. But then all of a sudden you throw a key in there and you realize kind of what this graph is telling you about and how you could actually use it to help support any claims that you're trying to make. Okay? So what we're going to do today is really break down, and I mean really break down, how to read and address and solve a word problem using a visual or graphic of some sort. So looking at this first question here, you're asked, it says, you are an appliance installer delivering a stove to a studio apartment. Where in the apartment do you install the stove? So the first thing we'd all probably do is probably solve this question in like 10 seconds, right? This is a very basic question. So you'd come over here and we quickly look at this and we quickly have an answer, right? But what I want you to do is just take a moment and just slow down for a second, because I know we could all answer this. I have absolutely no doubt this is a very easy problem. But what I want you to do, and what I have down below, is a list of 5 questions that really break down the problem. Now, this is a really easy problem to use as an example, but I want you to understand that the reason we're doing this is so that if you get a harder problem, you kind of know the mental steps you should be walking through. If you notice in these, we'll call them mental steps, none of them say give up and move on. Okay, that's just not how you handle a problem. You have to address it head on. So the first question is, what are you actually being asked to do? Okay, not what you're asked to find, but what are you asked to do? You are asked to locate the stove. In your head, that should be the very first step you do, is locate the stove. Okay, then the next question. This one even actually might seem obvious, but you'll find that it's actually a very important question to ask yourself. What are the facts? And in this case, looking at the picture, there's a lot of things that we actually don't know. Like, what is this object right here? I have no idea. I could guess that it's a table, but it's not labeled, so that's not a fact. Maybe it's just a really ugly fan. What is this? I don't know. It's not labeled. That is not a fact. If something is not labeled, it's not a fact. So some of the facts that we know are that all of the appliances are labeled. So I'm going to put that down. All appliances are labeled. Now there are some other furniture items or rooms that are labeled, but as far as the actual appliances go, we have the dishwasher, stove, refrigerator, TV. Those are our only appliances, and they are all labeled. So that's a given fact. They are actually all labeled. The next question says, how do you find your answer? Well, again, this seems obvious in this problem, but sometimes your brain is actually going through that process saying, okay, how am I going to find this answer? What do I got to do first? And the first thing that you have to do is look for the stove on this floor plan. So I'm going to write, look for stove on floor plan. Okay, and actually, if you recall when we started out this problem, I came right over here and I said, I bet you're looking at this picture right now trying to figure out the answer. That was the first thing that your brain did, was go to the floor plan and instantly say, where's the stove? Then another question that your brain actually probably doesn't even think about that much, but it is an important question to ask yourself, is there any unnecessary information? Because sometimes they're going to throw things at you, and honestly, it's not really going to help you, and it might even confuse you, and if at anything. So some of the information that's not necessary is all the labeled furniture. So I'm going to write labeled furniture. Do you think it's important that the dresser be labeled or the bed be labeled? No, that's not helpful. Another thing that's not important is the labels of the rooms. Do I care that this is a bathroom and that's a closet? No. So I'm going to write room labels. They're just not important for this particular question. Okay? Maybe they help us with the visual, but honestly, they're not important. And then another question, again, one that you probably don't even think about on a regular basis, but that does play a role, is this idea of prior knowledge. What prior knowledge do you have? And for most of us, our prior knowledge is going to be that a stove is normally located in the kitchen. So again, I'm sure that, when I say that aloud, you're like, oh, well, yeah, of course, that's common sense. That's your prior knowledge. Now, why would that, what would that mean to you guys? Well, if you're an installer and you call someone and they say, hey, we need you to install this stove, you might actually come out and say, well, do you have any doors or access to your kitchen from the outside? And they might be, yeah, we actually do. We have a patio door right here, right near the kitchen. Perfect. That's where we're going to come in then. Versus if you just said, hey, do you have a garage? And they might be like, yeah. Like, okay, well, I'm going to come in the garage. Well, you come through the garage and it might not be near the kitchen at all. So you have to understand that the stove is probably going to go in the kitchen. Now, coming back up here, we can kind of go through this process and start rolling things out. Is it besides the TV? Well, the TV's in the den, so that's going to be a no. Is it besides the dresser? Well, the stove isn't in the bedroom, so no. Here, across from the kitchen door. Well, that could be reasonable because you are talking about a kitchen, but when you look at that kitchen door, it's actually not across from it. It's not really near it, so you can rule that out. Besides the sink, this is another possible because, your stove could be next to the sink in the kitchen, right? But actually, in this case, it's not next to it, so we can rule that out. And the last option says between the dishwasher and the refrigerator. And sure enough, it is actually between those two, and B is going to be our final answer. So like I said, you probably answered that question in a couple of seconds, but you have to just sometimes slow down with the information and don't assume that you know everything. Okay, so we're going to move on to this next page here, and if you want to pause the video and try these examples by yourself, you are more than welcome to, but I'm going to go ahead and roll right into starting to solve these and think through these. So reading problem number 1, it says, you are a customer service representative. A customer in New Hampshire is interested in having her employees trained on your product. To which regional sales manager should you refer to? So if you come up here, you notice that you have a bunch of different regions across the state, in which case there is one contact person for each section or each region, and they probably manage kind of everything. Then it breaks it down even more and says which states are in that region. So coming back over here, we could look at this problem and say, okay, well, our customer is from New Hampshire. So we want to pair them up with somebody in New Hampshire. But you should notice that none of these words over here are like full state names. They're the abbreviations. So we're going to need to take a second and notice that we're talking about NH. We're looking for NH. So let's come up to our graph and look for NH. So I start scrolling through, and sure enough, here's NH. So who's going to be our contact person? Sandra. So I can come down here. Who's our contact person? A. And we have that problem done. Then we go on to the second part. And it says as a warehouse manager, you have a question about a shipment being sent to customers in Nevada. Again, taking note of what state you are talking about, Nevada, and the abbreviation that they give us. If they did not give us the abbreviation, you might have to actually look that up in order to use this chart, because nowhere up here does it actually say Nevada, and if you didn't know that abbreviation, you'd have to look it up, like I said. So which regional sales manager should we contact? Okay, so I'm going to start looking for NV. So I start coming down here and I'm looking for NV. I can actually take this out so that doesn't confuse us. We're looking for NV. NV, nope. No, nope. Oh, there it is. There's NV, Nevada. So who's going to be our contact person? Colvin, I think that's pronounced. So we come down here and our final answer is D. So reflecting upon these problems, again, that took us a couple of seconds to just kind of look at the chart and assess it. But some things that might have helped you is if you had some background knowledge of where these states are actually located. Because if you knew where Nevada was, you might be able to quickly rule out the Northeast and the Southeast, because you know Nevada's kind of on the western side of the country. So that kind of narrows this down to the Midwest, Southwest, and West. So that could help you kind of narrow your search window. Is it necessary? No, you could just sit here and spend a little extra time looking for NV. But if you had that prior knowledge, it would make the problem go a lot quicker. And in some of these standardized tests that are timed, the quicker you can solve an easy problem like this, the quicker you move on to the harder problems. Okay. Now with the remainder of your class, you do not have written homework in this packet. That's it for today. That's the end of the notes. But if you actually log into your Brain Genie account, I do want to remind you guys that looking at this right here, you might get this kind of error message that says something went wrong. As long as your name is up top here, there's nothing wrong. I don't know what that error message always comes up as. But if you actually click the home button, now this is the teacher view, but over here on the left-hand column, you should have somewhere that says goal. You should click goal. You're only going to have one goal right now, and it says logic practice. And you're going to want to go ahead and click your logic practice. There's a total of 8 skills that you should have to go through. They're very basic skills. Some of them are just, Venn diagrams. Some of them are counting. They're just kind of some pattern work to get your minds kind of thinking in that direction. If you don't have enough time in class to finish this, then it will become homework. So you have to get all 8 skills done before tomorrow. The more you can get done in class, the less you have for homework. All right. Good luck.